That's better. Hello, it's Thursday. Yes, we are doing mimics again this week, but this time they are travel-sized for your convenience. With Valentine's Day approaching, I thought I would just show any romantics out there how to create a little mimic ring box. But for any fellow dice goblins out there, I do just want to say that these guys can hold at least 8 standard D6s. Need I say more? Okay, let's talk tools and materials. So, for today's project, you're going to need 8 ply 100% acrylic yarn in a couple of different colors. For the outside of the box, you're going to need a main color and a color for his edges, as well as some black and an accent color for his eye. You won't need a lot of either of those two colors. And you're going to need a main color for his insides and a little bit of white for his teeth. You're also going to need a 3.5mm hook, pins and needles, and some scissors. You may also find some stitch markers useful for this project. But that's it. A written version of today's pattern will be made available to my patrons and will also be available on my Etsy, and I will leave links to both in the description down below for anybody who is interested. Right, so for our mimic today, we are going to start by making his base piece. Grabbing our main outside color, and we're going to start with a magic ring of 6. And I'm going with a very uninspired brown, grey, purple aesthetic for mine today. We're then going to work 2 repeats of 3 single crochet into the same stitch, then a single crochet, and then 3 single crochet into the same stitch. So that's our first lot, and now we're going to repeat that again, which should bring our round up to 14 stitches in total. We're then going to work 3 more rows like that, building our square up to 38 stitches around. Just like so. Now, yours will also likely be quite higgledy-piggledy like this is, and you should be able to stretch it out into a nice flat square. So that is the base of our box. Now, our next 2 rows are going to be worked in our edge color, so we have to work our first color change. So for this pattern, you'll always want to change colors in the stitch before you need your new color to be active, which means that I'm going to frog the last stitch of our previous row. And I'm going to use that stitch to work our color change. So how it works is I'm going to insert my hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. So I've got 2 loops of my existing color on my hook. Hold that out of the way. Grab a strand of the color I'm changing to, which for me is a dark gray, and pinch that at the base of the stitch. I'm then going to yarn over with it, pull through, and then tug on my tails until it settles down into a nice little single crochet. So what you should be able to see there is a completed single crochet entirely in our old color, but our new color is on our hook, ready to go. And with that, we're going to work our first row in our gray. I'm not going to carry the brown along with me, but I am going to leave it attached for now. So that starts with 4 single crochet, then 3 single crochet all into the same stitch, 9 single crochet, 3 single crochet into the next stitch, and then 4 single crochet. Which should get you to halfway around your rectangle, and then you're going to repeat that again to finish off the row. Just like so. So there is our first round in grey, and we're working our next round in our grey as well. So in the next round, it starts with 4 back post single crochet. So post crochet is when we work around the stem of the stitch instead of through the loops on top. Because this is back post, it means I'm inserting my hook from behind the piece, around the post, and then back to the back of the piece. So you can fold your work forward to make that a little bit easier to see. Otherwise it's just yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and complete your single crochet. So there is our first one, and we're just going to work the same stitch around the next 3 posts as well. Like so. So you'll see that that should give you 2 sets of loops. Now the stitches we'll work into next round are going to be these ones here on top. These ones here are now our decoration that's going to help define the base of our box. So the next stitch is a single crochet 3 together, which is basically just a decrease worked over 3 stitches instead of over 2. So I always do the invisible version of this stitch, which means I'm going to identify the 3 stitches that all went into the same stitch, insert my hook through the front loop of each of them, yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops, and then yarn over and complete my decrease. So this row has 4 of those single crochet 3 togethers, each falling at one of the corners. And each time you should check to make sure that they are worked over the 3 stitches we put into the same stitch in the previous round. That should help you keep your spacing correct on this particular piece. So the next instruction is 9 back post single crochet. So identify the first stem of a stitch not falling in that corner, which is this one here, and work 9 back post single crochet along that edge. Like so, which brings us to the next corner. So once again, we're going to identify the 3 stitches that went into that corner stitch and work our single crochet 3 together. You can then carry on and finish off that row. Like so. So now when you flatten the base of your box out, it should have a little bit of a lip in your grey that's starting to form the turn of the edge. Guys, I'm sorry about my voice. I don't know how it's coming through on the microphone, but I appear to be losing it a little bit. So we're just doing our best today. Now our next row starts in our brown. So we actually have to change back to it in the final stitch of our grey. So I'm just going to frog that last back post single crochet. And if I was reading ahead like you're supposed to when you follow patterns, I wouldn't be having this frogging issue. But I digress. So we'll change back to our brown, just grabbing it from where it's still attached and pulling it up, pinching it at the base of the stitch, changing our colors the way we did last time. You don't have to worry about working super cleanly on the inside because this is a double walled box, and so you won't see any of that. And now this time I am going to carry my grey around underneath because we will be swapping backwards and forwards between those 2 colors. So we start by working 4 single crochet in our brown. We've gone back to working through the loops now as well. And in that 4th stitch, I'm going to swap to my grey. Then we're working 1 stitch in our grey. So that means that we're using that stitch to swap back to our brown. And then it's 9 single crochet in our brown. Again, swapping back to our grey in that last stitch. Working just the 1 stitch in our grey that also swaps back to our brown, like so. So then it is 4 single crochet in our brown. So there is the first half of that row done, and you're going to repeat that to get back around to our starting point. So there we are at the end of that row. So there we are at the end of that row. Now I am going to trim off my grey at this point and reattach it later when we need to. You can keep carrying it under if you prefer. So you can go ahead now and work up the next 3 rows of 38 single crochet around, all in your brown. So that should give you a combined total of 114 stitches. So there we are. In the next row, we're going to be attaching his little grey handles, and we build those in the row. So we're going to start by just changing to our grey in the last stitch of our brown. Then we're going to make our handle. So it's a single crochet, and then tightly chain 12. And then single crochet into the next stitch, changing back to our brown. So there is the first little handle. Then in our brown, we're going to work 17 single crochet around to the other side of our box. Now you can choose to cut your grey off and then reattach it on the other side, but I'm just going to carry mine under for convenience. And change back to our grey. We're then just going to repeat the instructions to make the handle. So that is a single crochet, 12, chain 12, and then a single crochet, changing back to our brown. And then we finish that round in our brown and working 17 single crochet back to our start. Now you can once again choose to trim off your grey there and reattach it later when we need it, but I'm going to be carrying mine under again because we will need it in the next row as well. Okay, so there are still a few colour changes to go in this row. So we start by working 5 single crochet around. So the first one of those will fall into the grey single crochet, so don't forget about those. The second one will be the other side of the handle. And you might find that yours like twists up a little bit. You will just need to help encourage it to stay flat. You can use a little bit of starch or glue or hairspray just to help encourage that a little bit more permanently, or you can just position it every time it starts trying to curl. So that's 2 stitches there. And in the last stitch, I'm going to change to my grey. We're then going to work 1 stitch in our grey, changing back to our brown. And then 9 brown single crochet. Changing to our grey in the 9th stitch. Then working 1 grey single crochet, changing back to our brown. So we're then going to work 8 brown single crochet along this edge. Once again, not forgetting about those grey stitches that form the base of the handle. You're then going to continue using this technique to finish the row. So there we are at the end of that row, and we can now trim off our grey because we are done with it for this piece. So from here, what we're going to do is close off the top of this box slightly and then build the lining that will form the inside of the box. So we're going to start by working 38 back post single crochet around. And in the last stitch, change to the colour you're using for the inside of your box. I am going to be using this purple colour because that's just my default colour when it comes to mimics. So those back post single crochet have formed the lip around the top of our box. That's going to give us that nice flat join between the lid and the base. So you can now proceed in our purple to work up the next 9 rows to create the inner lining of our box. And then finish off. Now it should look a little bit like a purple marshmallow trying to pull itself out of like a knapsack or a toaster, but the real magic happens in just a second. So first we're just going to finish off this tiny little opening by grabbing our remaining tail and pulling it through the front loops only of the 6 stitches around our opening. So, and then pulling it tight to close, and just tucking it away inside. Now, just in case, this is your reminder that you should not have applied any stuffing anywhere to this piece, just like so. And now comes the magic part. So what you're going to do is use your thumbs to poke your purple or whatever color you've used down inside the base, pinching and rolling so that that row of back post single crochet forms the lip around the top. So there is the base of our little chest. Now at this point you can check his capacity if you're going to be using it as a dice holder. I've found that mine can hold comfortably 8 standard dice, but currently I have it holding a mix of different sizes. Okay, we're going to pop that to one side and we're going to make the lid. So once again, grab your brown and we're going to form the rectangle that forms the top of the lid. And then in row 6, we're going to start in our brown. But then change to our grey to add a couple of details to either side of his head. And I recommend carrying your colours underneath, ready for when you need to swap back. So that's how we look at the end of row 6. And in the next row, we're going to just lock in these, I don't know, side details and also add the cluster that's going to turn into his eye. So we start with 4 single crochet in our brown. Changing to our grey in the final stitch. Then work a single crochet 3 together, which should fall into the 3 stitches that we put into the same stitch in the previous round. And use that single crochet 3 together to change back to our brown. We are then going to work 8 back post single crochet in our brown across the grey stitches from the previous row. Now this particular one is just for decoration, so if you've had enough of the back post single crochet for now, you can just work regular single crochet in those. And again, changing back to our grey in the final stitch, where we're going to work another single crochet 3 together, then change back to our brown, which brings us to the front of our box. We're going to start by working 3 single crochet in our brown, and then in our 4th stitch we're going to change to our black. So that's different to the grey that we've been using. The black is going to provide the backdrop to our eye. Now if yours is just going to be a regular treasure chest, just ignore this colour change and work a single crochet where we work the cluster in the next stitch. I'm joining on my black, like so. And then in the next stitch, we are going to work a 4 double crochet cluster. So how that works is you yarn over with your black and insert it into the next stitch. Yarn over and pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops on your hook. So that is our first double crochet stub. And we're going to work 3 more of those all into the same stitch, each one adding an additional loop to our hook. Until we have 5 loops on our hook in total. Then you yarn over and pull through all 5 loops. And then we need to change back to our brown, and we're going to do that by working a final chain, which changes us back. So that will be our eyeball once we add a few extra details to it. But for now, that's what it should look like. We are done with our black, so you can trim that off at this point. And we're going to continue working in our brown and grey. So it is 4 brown single crochet, changing to our grey in the 4th. Working a single crochet 3 together, changing back to our brown. And working 8 back post single crochet along the 2nd grey edge. Changing back to our grey in the 8th stitch to work a final single crochet 3 together, changing back to our brown, and then just 5 single crochet to finish the round. And I think that might be the most complex round in the whole project. Okay, so we're going to stop there, trim off our grey because we are done with it now. And that is what the inside of mine looks like. So once again, this is a double walled piece, so you won't see any of that on the inside when we're done. So then working in our brown, we're going to work a row of 38 single crochet around. and then a row of 38 back post single crochet to finish off the outside of the lid. So at this point, if you did grab your lid and your base, you'll find that they don't necessarily match up very nicely. And that is because when you build the inner wall of the lid, it will help roll this row under and give us that nice sharp edge. So I just wanted to stop and warn you that the lid won't necessarily fit at this point. They shouldn't be far off though. Now, before we proceed into building out the teeth and the rest of the inside of the lid, we're going to add the details to the eye to make it look a little bit more like an eye. So all I'm going to do is thread my needle with a little bit of my eye color, which for me is a bright yellow. So we're looking very creaturey, little bucktooth weirdo, there you go. And you'll see here the underlying cluster stitch that we have there, and then we've added some yellow strands over the top to give him like a slit monster iris. So what I'm going to do is poke my needle out through, not the brown, but the very top of the black. And then, so that's the center top of the black, and then we're just going to pop it back in through the center bottom of the black, again leaving just a small, maybe 1 or 2 millimeter gap of black in between the black and the brown. You'll see I'm poking it straight through and wrapping it around. And as I pull that strand tight, I'm going to guide it to one side or the other. So it's going to want to naturally fall down the middle, but I'm going to guide it off to one side. And like, I'm not pulling it super, super tightly. We don't want to change the shape of the cluster. We're just stitching some yellow on over the top. And I'm going to do that exact same thing again to add another strand to that side. So just slowly, slowly, slowly. So it's sitting right. So that's 2 strands on one side. And we're going to do the same thing for the other side. I'm actually using the same entry and exit points for my needle for both sides. It's just a matter of where I guide the strand to fall. So this time I want it on the other side. There we go, so 1. 2, and I think I need a 3rd strand on that side to get it looking right, so we'll do another one. You can just keep adding strands of your color until your eye is looking right to you, and then I'm just going to tuck my needle through to the inside of the work. And you can fasten off however you prefer, whether that's like threading the end in or just tying a knot. So there is our monster eye. So now grabbing our hook again, we're going to build him some teeth. Starting again in our brown, we're going to work 3 single crochet, then single crochet 3 together, and then 3 single crochet, changing to our white in our final stitch. Now if you're using a different color for your teeth, now is the time to attach that instead of white. And if you're looking to do just a regular treasure box without these teeth, what you should do is ignore this color change, and instead of working the stitches that form the teeth, work single crochet instead around. So for the teeth, we're going to be forming them into the front loops only. So if you look straight down at these stitches, you should see that they form sort of these little V's, and you have a front loop on the outside and a back loop on the inside. So we'll be using the front loops to form the teeth, and then we'll be working in the back loops next row to help close off the underside of the lid. So something that might be very helpful for you at this point is if you grab a bobby pin or a stitch marker, mark the back loop of the next available stitch. So that way when we reach it in the next round, you'll know exactly where you're supposed to work, and you should be able to spot the others fairly easily once you know where this first one is. You can of course mark all of them if you prefer. So then working in the front loops, we are going to work a slip stitch, and then 6 repeats of a slip stitch. Then we're going to picot, and so how we do that is we chain 1, and then you chain 2 very, very tightly. The tighter you make those 2 chains, the pointier your tooth is going to be. Then insert your hook through the first chain and slip stitch into it. Then slip stitch into the next 2 stitches. So there is his first little tooth, and we're going to repeat that 5 more times. So slip stitch, picot, then 2 slip stitches. So that does result in you having 3 slip stitches between each tooth. And that's the tooth, whole tooth. nothing but the tooth. So in that final slip stitch, we're going to change back to our brown, and how you do that in a slip stitch is actually kind of funny looking. So insert your hook through the loop, hold your existing color out of the way, grab the color you're changing to, and just literally pull up the slip stitch in that color. So that's the end of our white. Now his teeth will get locked in the next row, but for now we just need to finish this row by working 3 single crochet, a single crochet 3 together, and then 4 single crochet, changing back to our purple for the final time in the last stitch. And that's a wrap on the brown as well. So there we go. You should have some pointy little chompers at this point. So we start the next row with 7 single crochet in our purple. Which should get us back around to where we made our first white slip stitch and where we marked our first back loop, just to help indicate which one that is, because sometimes it can be a little tricky to see. Then when we hit our white, what you actually want to do is insert your hook through both loops of the brown stitch from 2 rows ago. So you'll see we've inserted it under the slip stitch and through the back loop that we marked at the back. And you're going to yarn over and work your single crochet over the top of both. And we're going to do that for each pair around. So that's our first one. And then we have 1 more slip stitch before our first tooth. So under the slip stitch and through the back loop, single crochet. Now the tooth itself is just a picot and so isn't attached to any particular stitch, so we don't need to worry about that. But then you find the first of the 3 slip stitches between the teeth, insert your hook under the slip stitch and make sure that you're picking up the right back loop on the other side. Like so. Let's see where I'm inserting from the front through to the back. So pull up the first loop of the single crochet and then just pop the tooth back to the front of the work. Otherwise it'll get a little stuck on the back. And we've worked that single crochet around the tooth. So here we go, working onto a tooth again. So insert my hook under the slip stitch and into the back loop, yarn over and pull up my loop, pop the tooth to the front, tiny stubby little thing that it is, yarn over and complete my stitch. And we're just going to continue working that way the whole way along. Now, if you're finding this really annoying because it is a little bit fiddly, you can just work these single crochets into the back loops only from the previous round, and then just use a needle and some yarn to stitch over the top of the white afterwards. So there we are at the end of the teeth. So on my original guide, this is what it looks like if you just use a needle and some yarn to stitch over the top. Here it's slightly larger. This one here, you don't have to worry about sewing, so it's kind of a trade-off. Spit that out. And then we just have 8 single crochet in our purple to finish off that round. And you don't need this stitch marker anymore. He's actually kind of cute. He's like a monster Roomba. I don't know what that sound was. From here on out, we're working entirely in our purple, and you can go ahead and work the next 5 rows to build up the inner part of the lid. Uh-oh. There, now it's our little secret. And then finish off. So we're going to use the same trick that we use for every single thing we make ever, but the one that I showed you for the base, where you just pull the tail through the remaining stitches and pull to close. Okay, so this weird blobby looking little thing is our lid, and just like with the base, we're going to push the purple up inside the brown and like pinch and roll to make the edge that we formed using back post single crochet the lip around the lid. So there is our little orthodontist delight, and you can grab your base, and the two pieces should now go together. But you might find that there's a little bit of an overlap at the back, and that's fine. We're going to use that to form our hinge. So what you do is lay the two pieces open side up so that it's the back of the lid and the back of the box. There's no designated back for the box, it's just one of the long sides without the handles. And I actually find bobby pins or stitch markers really helpful for this bit. What I do is you pick one of the loops along that back edge, pick up the front loop only, so the outer loop, and the front loop of the matching stitch on the lid, and you just slip a bobby pin through both of them. And what this is going to do is help us test our lid position without having to fuss with sewing and then pinning and whatever. So these will just like provide a natural hinge that we can use to test. And that's looking pretty good at this point. You can use either your grey or your brown to sew this together. I'm going to use my brown today. If you use grey, it can look like a hinge. If you use brown, it'll sort of fade in a little bit more and it won't be as noticeable. I'm going to sew it together while it's in its closed position, stitching only through the front loops of the length of stitches we've identified. So with that done, we can remove those pins. And then what I like to do is I like to stitch back along, just reinforcing those existing stitches, not adding any sort of additional width or loops into the mix. Anytime you want a piece of crochet to sort of move, you want to make sure that it's reinforced, because otherwise it might work its way loose. So a hinge is sort of one of those high traffic areas. When I'm done, I'm just going to tuck my ends away down in between the walls of the body. And you will have to like squish it back into position. Okay, so if you're just making a dice box, you can now consider him done. But if you want to go the extra step of making him a ring box, like this one here, we just need to make one final piece. So I'm going to use the same purple that I used to line the inside of both the top and the base. And we're just going to whip up a little tongue. Now, if you're using yours as a dice box, you can also add the tongue, but it will take up the space where you could cram more dice in. So it's entirely up to you. And finish off. Now, we don't need to stuff this piece. And if you have the ring that you want it to hold handy, you can check to make sure that it sits on there nice and securely. Then you're going to grab your box and pin the top side of your tongue to the edge of the purple and the bottom side of your tongue sort of one row down on the brown. You want to give it a little bit of sort of three-dimensional quality there. And you do that by sort of pinning it into an open position rather than a squashed flat position, just like so. And make sure you give it a little test that as you open it, you can see it. So that's looking pretty good to me. So I'm going to grab some purple and I'm just going to stitch around the edge of it now. I don't know what it is about mimics, but they have always been my favorite in sort of any kind of dungeon crawler, RPG, D&D. There's just something about them that I've always really liked. Maybe it's their potential. They have the potential to be just about anything. I guess I just like large chests. And then the ring goes on there like that. So that when you open it, whee! So there is our finished mimic. Right, let me know in the comments what you are hiding in yours. Okay, bye.